Welcome to the practice, and today we will look into applying acceptance, and perhaps that stays with the practice, perhaps it extends into your daily living. This is always a choice for you. I have prepared today the usual blanket that is more for comfort and sitting support. I've also put 2 blocks there. This is also more for comfort. So if you do have 2 blocks, please have them ready for this practice. They might come in very handy. If you don't worry, 1 will be sufficient in that sense. So I would love to begin this practice lying down on the floor, as we so often do that. Please have the blocks by the side in case you would like them as a support. They are not required as such. So when you come to lie down on your back today, you might have a thin cushion under the head. Some of you might roll that cushioning up so it supports the neck as well. And as you find a way to settle onto the floor, bending the knees and letting your feet gently rest towards the mat. Your arms, they might slightly roll out to the side, and as I just did, you might snuggle your shoulder blades under so that the shoulders can easier rest, and perhaps the palms of your hands are facing upwards. Now, once your upper body is placed in this way, you may choose to look up towards the ceiling to steady your gaze, or perhaps close your eyes. You could then let your knees roll out to either side and touch the soles of your feet together, arriving in a reclined butterfly or Supta Baddha Konasana. Now, when this occurs, you might notice there's an opening starting to happen within the legs, maybe the hips. If you find these sensations a bit too intense, grab your 2 blocks and place them at whatever height you choose underneath your knees. Arms might return away from the body, and again, if that doesn't feel comfortable, let them rest in a different way. While you are coming to a rest here, do nothing at first, but simply observing yourself, the way you are feeling at this point in your day. As you begin the practice in this reclined position, you might notice the sensations that I mentioned, but perhaps you're noticing more. What else is happening within this body? Can you allow yourself to have an assessment of where you feel with ease, where you're feeling challenged in the body today? It could be a mild challenge, it could be a discomfort that you have. As you acknowledge that, you might allow the mind to explore whether there is something within these feelings of the physical body that you could change by adjusting your position. And then the rest of what you are feeling, notice that you're feeling this and acknowledge that it is this way right now. That when you cannot adapt your current posture or find a different way of being easy, it might better be to accept that that is. And there is already a practical application of acceptance towards your practice. What you're noticing right now within yourself, extend that a little bit further and take it towards the energies that you're holding. Noticing if your breath is flowing easy, an indication of your current comfort and state of relaxation. Repeat that same mental process. Acknowledge what it is that you can change and get comfortable with that you can't. Then take it a little bit further again. Notice your thoughts, notice your emotions and feelings that are currently present. Trying to keep it as such an observation. You notice there's a certain feeling or emotion present within yourself. The first thing is that a pleasant emotion? Is it a challenging one? And then there is that question to self, do I have an impact on that? Can I change it? Just by becoming aware of the circumstances in which we are in any given moment of time, we have choices. We can observe ourselves, we can accept what there is, we can make changes if we find any that are valuable. To generally help with this process, I'm suggesting a few rounds of sighing. While some of us might perceive sighing as kind of almost a sign of weakness, it really is not. So let's experiment with the sighing and see what effect that might have on our bodies, energy, and mind. Let's begin by taking a deeper breath in through the nostrils and allowing a soft sigh out. Keep breathing in, choosing these different sighs in your own time. And when you sigh out, perhaps there's a bit of a sound arriving. And as you go further and further, you might experiment even with the loudest of sighs if your environment allows it. Getting to a point where the sighs might become even heavy and noisy. Perhaps approaching this gradually so you're more comfortable with it. As you complete your practice of sighing, remain in your physical posture. Take natural breaths in and out of the nostrils, if available. And take a note of the different layers of which you are made up of again. Notice if the sighing impacted you physically, energetically, or mentally, or perhaps even in all areas. For our breathing practice or pranayama, it might be nice to remove the support from underneath your knees if there was any. Help the knees up. Set the feet out onto the edges of the mat. Readjust your back to a comfortable position and then let the knees fall inwards. Your arms ideally stay the same, a little away from the body, palms facing up, shoulders grounded. If the breathing practice doesn't suit you because it includes knee counting or yourself, feel free to let go of the count and just feeling into the length of it. If the hold of the breath that occurs might not suit you, you can experiment with its length or let it go as well. We will start the practice now, breathing in for a count of 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding the breath in the body for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling for a count of 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathing in for 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathing in for 4. Holding for 7. Breathing out for 8. And start again, breathing in for 4, your own pace of counting. Hold for 7, out for 8. So each breath in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. One more round after your current. And once completed, returning to the natural flow of your breath. And similar to what you did after the practice of sighing, checking back in with your being. What or is there any effect on you? You might then separate your knees. Bring your feet just a little bit closer so they're more comfortably on the ground. From there, you might draw your right knee towards the chest, holding onto it and giving it a squeeze in. You might enjoy extending the left leg out or keep the foot on the floor. Leaving only your right hand on the knee, take a breath in to guide your knee out towards the side like a half butterfly. When you brace out, change the hand on the knee and lightly guide the knee across the body, maintaining shoulders grounded. We'll let that rock for a little while. So breath in, the right hand opens the knee to the side. And then on the out breath, the left hand guides the knee across the body for a twist. So keep that flowing. Use your own natural pace of breathing. However, if your breath is really fast, you might like to slow it down a bit. And this next time you came across the body, roll back onto your back. Take a hold of the back of your thigh instead. And perhaps a breath out to draw the knee in and the nose up towards the knee. You might then release your head and shoulders back to the mat. Flex the foot and breathe in to aim to extend the leg upwards. Then point the foot and draw the knee back in towards your chest. So flexing the foot as you're extending, breathing in, pointing the foot and breathing out to draw the knee in. You may continue just like that. Or you might, as you draw the knee in, raise your nose back up towards the knee. While you lie back down on the inhale to flex the foot and extend the leg, you can choose to stay lying down or lifting your nose up to the knee as you're drawing it inward. One last round. Then release your head and shoulders back down, landing your right foot down onto the floor, landing the left foot down if you extended the leg, and finding your comfort again on your back. Then bringing your left knee to the chest and embracing that with your hands, which you might keep this way or choose to extend the right leg out long. Your left hand might now remain on the knee, and as you breathe in, open the knee out for a half butterfly. Then change the right hand on the knee, and as you breathe out, guiding the knee across the body, perhaps your shoulders stay grounded. We'll keep it rocking on this side, left hand onto the knee, breath in for your half butterfly. Change hand and breath out for a twist. Keep that going, left hand to open your in-breath. Right hand to twist your out-breath. As you breathe in the way you do, continue the movement. One last round. As you then roll again onto your back, bring the hands to hold on behind your thigh. Optional out-breath to raise the nose towards the knee. Align your head and shoulders back down, flexing the foot. And on the inhalation, starting to straighten the leg. Then point the foot and draw the knee in towards the chest. So we're flexing the foot on the inhalation to extend the leg. Then pointing the foot and on the out-breath, drawing it in. You may continue just like that, breathing in to extend and pointing the foot, but as you breathe out, you could now choose to raise your nose towards the knee instead of lying down. You do lie back down as you breathe in to flex the foot and extend the leg. Point it again, draw the knee in, optional lift of upper body. Last round here. As you might lie your body back down, you could choose to draw the right knee in, change your hold, embrace your knees. You could, for a little while, as we often naturally tend to do, rock a bit from side to side. Notice how that feels across your back and decide whether you want to roll over to your side or perhaps you choose to rock yourself up. It might take a few times until you land, or perhaps you deliberately repeat a few times. We will change our position once you've risen to a seated position and come to a standing posture. So I will ask you, if you are choosing to work with blocks, to perhaps place them onto the front side end of the mat, either side of you. You might come to stand in between those blocks. I will, for the time, turn myself forward so you can easier see what's happening. Try and align the outer edges of your feet with each other. You might enjoy a comfortable hip distance stance here, but I know we all have different habits, so perhaps your big toes are touching instead. As you find your tall stance there, encourage the inner heels to draw inwards to activate the legs. Gently turn the palms forward, but keep a sense of softness in the shoulders and in your arms. The breath in then to raise your left arm, and the breath out to find a side bend. A breath in to lift the arm again, and a breath out to release it to the side. Changing sides. breathing in, other arm lift, and breath out for a side bend. Let's repeat that. As you breathe in, come to stand. Breathe out to release your arms. Inhaling, left arm up. Exhaling, side bend. Inhale, lift. Exhale to release. Inhale, lift. Exhale, bend to your side. Inhale, lift. Exhale to release your arms. Breathing in, the left arm lifts and we stay. Actively grounding through the feet and see if your fingertips can touch the ceiling. I hope they can't, but still reaching there. And then bending that very elbow so your fingertips landing somewhere behind your back. Keep your head up tall, even if your elbow needs to go out a little bit towards the side. You could then take the other hand on towards that elbow and start to encourage it backwards. You might start to notice that your lower ribs are rising. Can you draw them back lightly inwards so the spine stays in a more neutral position? And are your feet still drawing inwards? If you find this position is sufficient for you, stay here. Or you might choose to return to a side bend. Keeping your shoulder back and encouraging the elbow back as well. Then take the breath to release both arms, extending back up and down, and releasing your left arm down by the side. Is your stand still firm? A breath in now to raise the right arm. And the same here, almost pressing your feet into the floor and trying to touch the fingertips towards the ceiling for length. You might then bend that very elbow and perhaps your fingertips are touching somewhere behind your back. You could then reach the other hand and hold onto your elbow and encourage the elbow back. Again, it's natural that the lower ribs are flaring up, but can you draw them a little bit in using your core muscles and helping that elbow further back? You might find this is enough for you, then please stay. Or come into a side bend on your next out breath. Remember, these are all options for you to choose from, taking the practice according to your acceptance technique. As you come back to stand, extend your arms back up and down. Then release the arm on the out breath along the side of the body. Palms are turned back forward, inner heels are active again. As you stand, you might lower your gaze or briefly close your eyes. As you breathe, take a note of how you are, completely as a being on this mat. The same here, when we apply movements into the body, you might be able to adapt them if you need to. You might find that some you better leave, accepting that the body currently is what it is. Your next breath in, you might lift your arms, perhaps the gaze rises. Touching the palms of your hands together as you soften your knees, begin to draw the hands down the midline and slowly folding forward. Your fingertips might end up on blocks or the shins as you're lengthening your spine forward, half lift position. On your next out breath, step the right foot far down the mat. If you like a cushioning under the knees, place it there, otherwise lower your knee down to the floor. Blocks can have the height that you choose, and you might wiggle your left foot a bit further forward. To accommodate what happens now, the hips might lean a bit forward. I've kind of moved my blocks a bit backwards, which you can do at any time, only to demonstrate that my knee is still over my ankle joint. And I'd ask you to find a similar position. Now, while the hips might sink forward and there could be a light extension there in the hip flexor area, keep your spine long and draw your left side of the pelvis ever so slightly back. The neck is long too. You might briefly close your eyes to feel and to notice. Ashvasanchalanasana, the horse rider pose. You might from there now lift your hips and bring them up over the knees. You might raise the sole of the foot in front of you and perhaps slide this heel out a little bit further. I'm now taking my blocks a little bit back, or the hands for the matter. Keep drawing your left hip lightly in to balance it with your right. Draw the toes back up towards you or press the ball of the foot forward as well. And find this length in the spine on your inhale, only to lean down towards your leg on the out breath. You can still adjust your blocks. Perhaps they need to be a bit lower, perhaps they need to be a bit higher. Allowing your nose to lean towards this extended leg, keeping the leg reasonably straight and the foot active, either flexed or flointed. And allow yourself to feel what happens behind the leg as well as in the rest of your body. Each time that there's a pause coming into the practice, notice what is there for you. As you breathe in, bend this front knee and then take the knee back, align it with the other. I will pause my blocks out to the side and instead bring my hands down onto the mat. You can also choose to have fists here. Then rolling the spine forward and landing in a kneeling plank. There's space coming in between your shoulder blades and the tailbone draws downwards towards the heels to engage the core. Keeping your elbows close while you breathe out, come to lower down onto the mat. You might even place the forehead down. Arms might lengthen along the sides of your body, touching the tops of the feet down onto the floor and lifting the knees with it lightly off the ground. Keep the tops of your hands grounded, your tops of the feet, and take a breath in to lightly lift your upper body. You might engage right down to the fingers and your toes. If it is right for you, you may lift your hands. If you feel engaged enough, you might lift your feet or legs. Variation of Shalabhasana. Out breath, release this towards the floor. Perhaps turn your favorite ear down, soften your arms, relax your legs. And take deep breaths, filling the abdomen, filling your rib cage. Again, I hope you use this time for self-observation. As you turn the forehead back to the mat, let your hands return underneath your shoulders. Breathing in as you might come up onto your hands and knees. Draw the toes under, arms stretch forward and hips stretch up and back. Happy pose. Some of you might stay here, others might lift the knees and find a down dog. No matter your choice, you might move the shape a little. Get a wiggle into the pelvis perhaps. If you are in a down dog, start walking forward. If you are on your knees, start sliding forward before we all might end in a standing forward fold. An out breath to uncurl the spine, to roll up to standing. A breath in to lift the arms, maybe the gaze comes up. touching the palms of the hands and softening the knees as the hands travel back down the midline towards your forward bend or Uttanasana. The in-breath for your half lift. The out-breath, and you might have your blocks ready to step the left foot down the mat. Again, you might ground the knee onto support if you wish. Wiggling your right foot forward enough so that when you start to lean into this lunge, the front knee is still over your ankle joint. We're still drawing that front hip ever so slightly back. And the aim here is to lengthen the spine, including the neck. The blocks might be a very useful support on either side, but perhaps you're comfortable on your fingertips. Feeling into what is there for you. Maybe an extension, perhaps a light stretch. Then start to lift your hips again, drawing the blocks or hands a bit back as you raise the sole of the foot and perhaps the heel slides a tad bit further forward. Then begin to actively pull your toes back or do that and push the ball of the foot forward. Pelvis is still in balance, and I find that much easier with the activated front leg, as you could choose to lower down your nose towards the knees. The same here, keeping this front leg reasonably extended so that you might benefit from a lengthening behind your leg. And depending on the positioning of the foot, some areas here feel more or less intense. Keep your shoulders easy and take a few breaths just to be. To be while you're observing yourself. As you next inhale, soften back into the front knee, and then take the front knee and align it with the back knee. I'm again leaving my blocks out to the side for now. My hands are coming onto the ground. You can now choose to repeat your kneeling plank and roll your spine forward into it. Or you might tuck the toes under once you're there and lift the knees off the floor. Still, for all, please draw your tailbone towards your heels and have space in between the shoulder blades. For your elbows, they stay by your side as you breathe out to lower once more all the way onto the tummy, perhaps even the forehead. Again, if it is suitable, lengthen the arms along the side of your body. This time, perhaps touching the palms to the floor so your thumbs are pointing outwards. We might begin in a very similar fashion. While you breathe in, lift the head and the chest. Draw your fingers downwards, touch the tops of the feet to the floor, the knees are rising, your toes are stretching back too. And as you could choose to stay just like this, you might also choose to lift the hands off the ground. Keep the palms facing down, keep active. If this still feels right, you would like a bit more, take the legs off the floor. Again, variation of Shalabhasana, locust pose. For your rest this time, turn the palms back up before you land and take your second ear to the mat to soften. Please use this time once more just to observe, be present. What is there for you? Is it something you appreciate? Is it something that might need some change if available? Centering the head, bring the hands back underneath the shoulders. Take a breath in, come onto all fours, toes might draw under. You can choose between your puppy or a downward facing dog. From there, You might allow your knees to come forward or take a walk with the feet, landing feet onto the floor, ultimately for a standing forward bend at the front side end of your mat. With your knees soft, breathing out to uncurl the spine, rising to a stand, lifting the shoulders and giving them a gentle shrug back as you turn the palms of the hands forward and draw inner heels back towards each other. As you breathe in, raise your right heel or knee and lift your arm. Bring your hands to the heart and take a step back with your right foot. Reaching both arms back up for a high lunge. Bending your right elbow so the hand goes back behind, and you might take a hold with the left hand. We've practiced that in the mountain pose. While you soften into both of your knees to encourage the hip flexor stretch, you're also encouraging a stretch in the triceps area. Option only is to bend to your left. With the breath in, rise back to a high lunge. With the breath out, release your arms along the sides of the body, shifting your weight lightly forward as you draw the knee up from behind. Standing leg might bend too, your heel might rest upon the thigh. Have a dance. Also part of acceptance practice that balance is challenging, and perhaps your opposite elbow lands to the leg. Maybe your chin comes into the palm, perhaps the other hand rests into the side of the waist or gently behind. Maybe you followed into one step or the other. Perhaps you are wobbling with all. Let's lift the knee again. Release your arm. Land your foot to the ground and find your mountain again. Breathe your inner heels. Find a tall stance. Lower your gaze or close the eyes. Come back to your natural, deeper breath that is flowing. Notice what it was about these last few postures that you might learn about. On the breath in, lifting the arm, the left heel, bringing the hands down towards the heart while stepping your left foot down the mat. Soften into both of your knees for the lunge. A breath in to reach both arms up if possible. And perhaps bending the left elbow so the hand touches behind. Right hand might go to this elbow as you draw it backwards. As you sink into both of your knees to already extend into the hip flexors, your extra option would be a side bend to your right. A breath in to return to the high lunge. A breath out to release the arms along the side. Starting to shift the weight forward, and you might bring your left knee up, perhaps even rest the heel to the thigh with a light bend in your standing leg. Please be reminded that everything here is optional, as you could take the right elbow to your left thigh, perhaps rest the chin into your hand, and maybe even bring the other hand to your side. Keep smiling, especially if this thinker is rather a dancer. And then slowly release, landing your foot to the ground, reclaiming another mountain pose. Deep, slow way of breathing. Perhaps your eye gaze lowers or the eyes close as you experience yourself standing here. A breath in now to reach your arms back up. Again, join the palms of your hands and soften your knees for the out breath, folding forward. You might allow a half lift and support of your fingers. The hands might land to the floor and so might your knees. Keeping your toes tucked under, lowering your forearms onto the mat. My elbows have landed directly underneath the shoulders. Please do the same, and perhaps even avoiding to bring the elbows out in the process of your postural setup. You might have your hands spread out onto the floor. You could interlace the hands. You could then reach your hips up and back. Please leave your head off the ground and rather floaty. If you find kneeling is for you, stay. If you want a little bit more, lift the knees off the floor. This doesn't suit my left shoulder, so please, if you make that decision, still lifting your hips all the way up and back. Finding either this baby dolphin or with the knees off the floor, a full dolphin pose. And hold. This is a light inversion. There is some extra blood flow coming into the head. And at the same time, we're applying a bit of strength to the forearms, a bit of strength into the arms at all, and the shoulders themselves. And you might explore that extension from the shoulders up towards the tailbone as in spinal lengthening. Please take a note of what it might be that you are accepting here, or the things you are able to change. If your knees are off the mat, please bring them back down. If you're on your knees, and for all, please untuck the toes. And you might slowly reach your buttocks down towards your heels. If it is available, if not, please leave the hands forward as a support. Could you bring your arms along the sides of the body, hands resting next to the feet, and perhaps the forehead touches the ground. If that is uncomfortable for you, you may take a block to rest the forehead upon. At this point in the practice, perhaps resting the forehead down feels beneficial. Let your shoulders be easy no matter the choice of your arms. Perhaps there's a bit of opening coming into the space along either side of the spine and between the shoulder blades. Maybe you can even find your breath moving along your back. Taking a couple more breaths. Then as you next exhale, begin to roll your spine up to sit. Don't worry, we're not staying seated on the heels. You might just be here to take the shoulders with you and let them gently shrug down. I will use this block on my mat currently for my next seated position. If you enjoy an elevation in your seat, please do the same. Place the block down and come to sit upon it. Your legs might be stepped out lightly in front of you. Extending perhaps your left leg out long for now, and then picking up your right foot with your left hand. The other hand might rest upon the knee, or you might have your knee resting in your elbow grease. And then just rocking the baby, as we call this. It's a movement into the leg. I like to change the angle of the bend in the knee a few times and explore how that impacts the movement in the pelvis, in the hip joint. You might find that at some point, yeah, that's all right. I can place this foot down. You can either choose to take the foot underneath the leg and touch it towards the outside here of your pelvis, or you might choose to keep it a little bit further forward, which is often a bit easier for the hip itself. Then start to pick up your left foot with your right hand. Take the other hand onto your knee or let the elbow rest there, and repeat rocking the baby. Aware perhaps of how these sides differ. If there's anything you can do, and maybe that's a change of the angle of the bend in the knee that serves you to release here. Once you feel that hip feels easier, you might choose to place your foot down in front, which will be my choice. But you could also take that foot all the way to the outside of the other hip. Now, this would also be an option, landing the foot so the ankle is straight and holding it this way. As this is my challenging hip, I will choose the easiest variation, or at least easiest for myself. Take a breath in then and lift your left arm back up. On the out breath, bend at the elbow. You might take a hold again of this elbow, but you could also choose to bring your arm behind for a bind. Even if the bind isn't happening, keep your lower ribs lightly drawing in as you're expanding into the cow face pose. We won't make any change here unless you choose to do so, as you might choose to lower your gaze or close the eyes and be present with the form in which you are right now and its impact on you. On the next inhale, releasing your arms out and down as you breathe out. You might use your hands to lean into to step both feet back onto the ground. We have released our hips, so you might now choose to bring your left foot across or even to the outside of the hip. Making another choice for the right leg, either the foot in front of your shin, the foot coming lightly across, or perhaps even taking the foot to the other side of the hip. For my personal balance, I will choose the same as on the other side. Option to raise your right arm. Perhaps bending at the elbow so the hand comes behind your back, and either choosing the hold on the elbow or taking the opposite arm behind to attempt to bind. Same engagement, lower ribs ever so lightly coming in, perhaps lowering your gaze or closing the eyes, and once more being present with that is there for you right now to observe, to change, or to accept. As you breathe in, release the arms. As you breathe out, land them back down. Fingers might come behind, so you can step the feet back down And you might choose to just lightly slip off your block. The block you might place back out and away from the mat. You can keep it close if you think the blocks are useful for relaxation. I will have my blanket there for a cushioning underneath the head, and I would ask you to join me in a lying down position on the back. I will now tuck the blanket lightly underneath the neck for better support there, so that I can easily align my nose with my navel without tilting the head in any shape or form. You can, as usually, opt for constructive rest. We practice that for our pranayama or breathing practice today. That's feet out wide, knees bent and dropping in towards each other. Or you might let your legs come out long. Perhaps you even have a bolster available. Or you might choose, as some of us do have two blocks, to place them underneath the thighs for a lighter support. Arms might drop away from the body. You could snuggle your shoulder blades under. And whenever you feel ready, your spine is aligned, you're comfortably supported. You might steady your gaze or close the eyes. Taking a couple of deeper breaths in and sighing out. Perhaps you remember which sigh felt the best. So make it quiet or noisy or in between. And at the end of this next sigh, let your body rest. Let the first few breaths just be there to observe yourself again. What have you learned about acceptance so far? Acceptance is truly far away from doing nothing. To truly or even radically accept, we need to be humble and tap into our true self. Acceptance is part of purifying the mind or mental hygiene. You might choose to take in a few ideas about acceptance, either just listening, taking them in, and perhaps learning to apply them gradually, or even indulging in a couple of thoughts before the next suggestion, maybe even putting it directly into practice. Pay attention to what triggers your own resistance. Notice when you can't accept something. Then perhaps remind yourself that in this moment, you can't change this. And also remind yourself that the causes of this reality are outside of your control. Then perhaps think about what you would do if you could accept what happened. and imagine what things would be like if you completely accepted this situation. You might use relaxation techniques, mindfulness practice, journaling, self-reflection, whatever speaks to you to understand your own emotions. Once relaxed into it in your own method and way, you might allow yourself to safely feel these emotions. Perhaps observing now how emotions resonate in your body. You might feel them as tightness, pain, restriction, if they are of the challenging kind. And accept that life can be worthwhile even when experiencing pain and suffering. You might decide to come back to a similar practice of acceptance when you feel the next time resistance is arising. Applying those steps or similar ones might help to stop thinking about how things could have been and allow you to live more in the present moment. Why to practice acceptance? There's a problem with a lack of acceptance. As when you try not to feel your pain and suffering and accept for what it is, you are also choosing not to feel joy or happiness. Acceptance, perhaps a part of daily awareness. As radical acceptance comes from the practice of Buddhism, it was intriguing to find the card of Buddha in the card deck of Aboriginal goddesses. It says here, amongst other things, that as a result of your courageous effort, changes will inevitably occur, which will make you uncomfortable for a while. However, discomfort will be quickly replaced with the clarity you have been searching for. The answers you've been seeking will all become abundantly clear within days of the changes that you choose to make happen. Perhaps you had a particular practice of acceptance of a certain thing in your life. You might continue this practice or state it as if it has already occurred, to take it with you as your intention for the rest of the day, perhaps for the rest of the week. You might choose a simple intention: I will practice acceptance, or take a particular one with you. Beginning to slowly deepen your breathing and notice how that makes you feel. Perhaps you then start to feel like adding some movement or stretching. And slowly coming to join me in a seated position. You might allow the hands to face forward, ready to take what is there for you. Lift up the arms while you breathe in. And draw the hands down to tap towards the heart, the center of joy and happiness. And from this place, with awareness, we extend with a bow toward each other. Namaste.